Have you ever believed something that wasn't true? Never. No. So you all laugh, meaning now you know why I said don't answer it out loud. It could be things like when you were in childhood, and like if you swallowed gum, it was going to stay in your stomach for 7 years. That's like an actual number that was said that we all somehow know that one by. It could have been the idea that like if you crack your knuckles, you're going to get arthritis. Is that anyone? I still crack my knuckles, still haven't had it. Anyone? Okay. I think scientifically not true, but who knows? I still am nervous every time I crack my knuckles. Maybe you've like walked around looking for something like your keys just rapidly throughout your house to realize that they were in your hand like the whole time. You believe something that wasn't true. Now, I don't know if you have heard recently, but there's actually a true story of a woman who believed that she was dating Brad Pitt. Anybody? Not a Brad Pitt, but like the Brad Pitt. And it wasn't Angelina Jolie or the other gal he's dating now, but she believed that she was dating Brad Pitt. And the way the story plays out is that actually at first, it was Brad Pitt's mother who contacted her and got to know her a little bit. And then Brad started to talk to her, and Brad knew certain things about her life, certain interests. Seemed as if she may have met him somewhere, and could go on and on and on. And this started to develop where she started to believe more and more about his life. And then he was sending these photos of being in the hospital, all the way to the point of her getting scammed out of over $800,000. Over $800K, she sent Brad Pitt in the hospital money because they were dating, though they'd only met over text. How about that? Anyone heard this one yet? No? Yeah, no? New information. It's like a real story. Now, very quickly, I read this and I'm like, what in the world? How could you ever believe, first of all, that you're dating Brad Pitt? I don't even think I could date Brad Pitt. Like Brad Pitt is just like Brad Pitt. Like he's undateable. Like there's no way, right? So then you work backwards though. Now you're dating someone online, right? So we can very quickly think like this, how could anyone ever believe this? But I would offer to us that it's belief that precedes our behaviors. It's belief that precedes our behaviors. The things that we actually believe lead to what we actually end up doing in our life. And for this woman, it was that she believed she was dating Brad Pitt. So therefore, she did things like you do in your dating. You send people in the hospital gobs of money that you've never met. So watch out with your dating. But I don't think really our belief leading to behaviors is just about the childhood myths or the romance stories. Like there's like real things that this leads to in our life. Like what you believe about yourself dictates how you show up in the room and with people. What you believe about your role in marriage or in dating dictates the way that you're going to actually operate or treat your spouse or the person that you're dating. What you believe about your money is going to determine how you spend it, how you save it, how you give it. What you believe about your own desires and the things that might be inside of you or true of you is going to dictate essentially what you give your life to and who you give your life to. And ultimately, what we believe about God will actually dictate everything in our life. Even if we don't believe in God, it is still going to dictate how we operate in our life. And if belief is this powerful, then we should probably spend time like working out what we actually believe. If belief matters this much in our life that it's going to dictate how we behave, how we operate, how we walk in the world, how we spend our time and our energy and our money, then we might really want to consider like, what do we actually believe? Because I would offer to us that right now, it can be harder and harder to know what to believe. Like this gentleman who used AI to produce faces of Brad Pitt on his own to scam someone out of $800,000. Very quickly, I believe we are inundated with misinformation, whether it be clickbait, whether it be deepfake videos, whatever it is, over and over and over again, what you and I actually spend more of our time doing throughout the day without realizing it is asking, do I believe this or not? Is this believable? Is my life believable? Is what someone's telling me believable? You're asking right now, is what Ryan is saying, is it believable? Do I believe this? Over and over and over again, we now have to become people that are discerning, is the information I'm being given true? Is it right? Is it good? And we are being bombarded with competing opinions on identity, morality, and purpose. You might be here this morning, even being someone who doesn't want to believe anymore, or maybe even can't. As you look out over the world, you can very quickly get to a point of saying, is there anything even worth believing in anymore? What's it worth? Why would I actually believe in the things that are falling apart? When I look out of our political landscape right now, what's actually worth believing in? When I hear people's promises and hopes and dreams that are going to impact everyone's future and they continue to not be lived up to, what do I actually believe? Can I believe any of this? And so whether you are someone of high belief, whether you're questioning what to believe, whether you feel like there's not much more to believe in anymore and things are hopeless, irreconcilable, are just too far gone, I would offer to us this morning and over the weeks now leading up to Easter that what if we don't need more? What if we don't need new information, but what if we actually need something ancient? That as we walk through our days and we can feel like everything around us is unstable, that it's uncertain, that it's unclear, that we don't know what to do, when to do it, and even how to do it. What if we need something ancient? For thousands of years, the people of Jesus have looked to something called the Apostles' Creed. There's a number of creeds out there, a few key ones that have given a center to Christianity outside of and beyond Jesus in the scriptures. But the Apostles' Creed is a way in which we can actually look at something ancient. It's one of the most just enduring statements of faith in a very condensed way that has helped people navigate uncertain times. It has helped people define what they believe and find a center as there has been political upheaval in their lives, as there's been the chaos of war and oppression. People that have lived their lives now for some time and been able to find a grounding when everything feels uncertain. And one of those things has been the Apostles' Creed. And it's not because it was new to anybody. It's because it's true. That it can actually give us a center when we're not too sure what to believe. And it all starts with the very first words. You have the card in your chair. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. Before anything else, before we answer any other questions about our faith or the faith of others, we start here. Do you believe in God? Do we believe in God? Because everything else actually flows from that. And it starts in the very beginning, even Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The writers in the book of Isaiah, do you not know, have you not heard, the Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the heavens and earth. The writers of Hebrews, by faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command. See, when we recite the Apostles' Creed, we're not just actually stating our personal beliefs. Some of you in this room who've been married, maybe you wrote your own vows for your wedding. That is a way of actually taking something ancient like the vows that were sitting there and to kind of recreate in a way that made sense for you, for your own words, those kind of things. But either way, you're not creating anything new. You're trying to reimagine or rework what's always been true. And so like this, we're actually not stating just our personal beliefs as if we're constructing faith by ourselves. In our current moment, in our individualistic culture, it can be quick to try and define who God is by ourselves. Well, I think God is. Well, I think we should. Well, if Jesus was, I think, and we can do the I thing over and over and over again. But what we're actually doing with the creed is we're aligning our faith, my own personal beliefs, my own identity, my own individuality, which can be a gift also, We're actually taking that and we're aligning it with the ancient church. We're aligning it with something that is bigger than ourselves, greater than ourselves, beyond ourselves. Something that came before us and something that's going to continue after us. We are aligning ourselves with something bigger. Justo Gonzalez, a theologian, says, the creed is not ultimately about what I believe. It is rather about the one in whom I believe. God, the Father Almighty. This means that when we say I believe in God. Again, we can read that very quickly as just this is my own little personal statement. We're not just making this personal declaration, but again, we're stepping into a centuries-old movement of people who have gone through persecution, who have gone through political upheaval, who have gone through rapid cultural change. Maybe not as quick as we're going to be experiencing it now and for this future to come, but they have sat where you sat, maybe in even worse ways. There are people across our globe right now who sit where you sit, yet are persecuted, yet are threatened of their job, yet they're threatened of their marriage, yet they are threatened of even their own life. As we see some Christians in countries being beheaded currently, like right now. And it is the Apostles' Creed that condenses some belief to give us a center of what do we believe about God? What do we believe about our faith? And it declares this, that God is our creator and that he's a good one. That he is a good creator, and he hasn't just created some things that we get to enjoy or play with or try to figure out for ourselves, but he's actually created everything. He's created everyone, and he very specifically has created you. Everything, everyone, and you have been created by God. Paul was an early church leader, had a radical shift to Christianity after persecuting Christians and hating God. And God meets him in an unlikely and powerful way, and he goes on to write a good amount of what's called our New Testament, the second half of the Bible that documents the life of Jesus and the early church. And he goes and plants churches in Asia Minor. And he's in a conversation with a group of people and some philosophers, and they're all worshiping idols. They have many gods. They have all these different things going on. It's a very uncertain time of what people believe. There's many things they could believe. And Paul starts to talk to them, and we pick up mid-paragraph. He says, "The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands. And he is not served by human hands, as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else." Paul begins with just this massively sweeping claim over all things, that God is the creator of all things. He is the one that has assembled all things. He is the one that has put all things together. And it is not confined to your and my hands. It is not confined to your and my understanding. It is not confined to your and I's experience. Over and over again, there is a God who has created everything around you way bigger than you, way bigger than me. The first implication of this passage, I'm going to work out a couple of them, is that simply God created everything. This passage tells us that God created everything. Now, that might feel simple and basic, but how often do you forget that you live in the creation of God? Everything around you, everything you experience, everything you see, everything you touch would be attributed to a God who has created all things. Nothing exists apart from him. And the reality of that is that means that everything around you and I, everything we live through and experience is not by accident. There is a God who has actually used his hands to create, very intentionally, the world in which you and I inhabit. And he has authority over all of it. How quickly do you and I assume that we carry out full authority in our lives and the lives of others? That we make the world go round? There's nothing like shutting down for 24 hours, or annually I go on a silent retreat and my phone is gone for 2 to 3 days. It's a very vulnerable feeling. But very quickly I come back to a world that kept spinning. Very quickly, I could be plucked out of the center of what I think I'm at the center of. And I can be reminded so fast that the world goes on without me. Your lives go on without me. The lives around me that I care most about go on without me. The things that we build, our homes, our careers, our achievements, what it says is that we are not the end of ourselves, but only God is. Everything that you and I work for still exists within the canopy that God created everything. So if God did create everything, what does that mean for how you view the world around you? When's the last time you stopped to pause to think, God created this? I'm living in something greater than myself. Paul continues, rather, he himself gave everyone life and breath and everything else. From one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. So not only did he create everything in the world, but he also sustains it. Every breath you and I take, every beat of our hearts, it all comes from him. The second implication of this is that God created everyone. Again, I know a simple truth, very basic. But do you ever think that maybe God created them on accident? Man, God messed that one up. Very quickly, we just have these thoughts like that must be a mistake. How could someone be that bad? Or whatever it is. Like very quickly, we forget that God put unique design to their life just as he did mine, just as he did yours. It is the same breath that fills their lung that fills ours. He still has an idea and imagination for their life just as much as you want him to have an idea and imagination for your life. See, if he has created everyone, this means that every single human has inherent dignity and value. Yes, those that are oppressed. Yes, those that are marginalized. Yes, those that are in power. Yes, those that are doing the oppression. He has created everyone, and every single person has inherent dignity and value. We do not then get to decide who is worthy because God already has. We do not get to look at other people's lives and determine if they have value or worth because God, by creating them, has already said they have value and they have worth. So if God created everyone, how should that change the way you see the people around you? How should that change the way you see people who are far from you? How does that change the way you should see people different than you? Paul continues, God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. Paul being cheeky with the philosophers of that time. The third implication, God created you. I know, very simple, very basic. Why did I show up for Brian to tell me that God created everything, that he created everyone, and that he created you? His creation is absolutely intentional. And if we believe or work to believe that God is good, that means that you have been created for good. You and I, sitting in this room, have been created for something greater than ourselves. And what it says here, that the purpose in which he is created is to seek him, to reach him, to find him. For you and I to actually associate ourselves with the living God that created all things. For you and I to live a life that tries to find our meaning and our connection and our purpose with someone and something greater than ourselves. That you and I would actually find why we were designed, why we were created, what were we actually created for. And in that, it gives you and I purpose beyond what you and I could imagine or even do ourselves. Because it's not found in what you do or what you achieve or how great you can be or even how lowly you might be. Your worth, your dignity, your purpose is found in God, not necessarily inside yourself or in your circumstance that you find yourself in right now. When you're confused on what to believe or what to do, when you're confused and trying to figure out who you are and why you were created, it's the creator of the furniture that also creates the instruction manual. Like if you want to figure out how your car works, then you need to go to like either someone else who knows it better than you or the instruction manual. Is the creator who has said, here's why I created you. Here's how I created you. Here's the unique design. Here's why this part works and why it's connected to this thing and how this thing works over here. If something feels out of alignment, I would offer to you that our creator might actually have the answer. When things aren't making sense, when things are wonky, there might be someone who created you for good to say, hey, what if you actually tried this on? What if you did this thing over here that I've set out for you to do? What if I already had the truth in what you're looking for? If God created you, how does that change the way you see yourself? How does that change the way you see your life right now? If God created you purposefully and intentionally, what might actually be influenced in your life? I was having a conversation with someone recently who has, over these last number of years, became uber successful to a point of selling a company that will provide for a lifetime. And one of the things he shared was that I thought my whole life was to be spent making a lot of money. And as I worked really hard to do that and finally got to it, I sat there in front of my computer screen waiting for the deposit from the sale of my company to hit. And it hit. And it was more money than I could ever imagine having. And yet, it was the most anticlimactic end I could have ever thought I would have experienced. Everything that I had worked for, everything I thought I was to work for, I got. And yet, I still woke up the next day feeling and experiencing the same things. There's actually a God who has created you for purpose and has given you ways to live beyond just your own understanding of how you and I think we are to live or the things that we are to chase. So if God is our creator and if he is good, that will actually change everything about how we experience everything, everyone, and even ourselves. Because if he is good, creation has purpose. And if creation has purpose, then you and I actually have purpose. And if this is true, it brings us to an important truth. Belief in a good creator reveals the good we were created for. Belief in a good creator reveals the good that you were created for. One of the things I love looking back on is that the early Christian church who would take this serious, they were ones who actually lived beyond themselves. We experienced a pandemic a number of years ago. They would have experienced many back to back. And it was the Christians who stayed behind in the cities, taking care of those that were sick at the risk of their own life. It was the Christians who, when the Romans decided that this baby, because of defect or gender, was not worth living, would set the babies outside the city walls to expose them to death. It was the Christians who walked the city walls and picked up the babies, adopted them, and gave them life. Over and over again, we can work through story and story and story of the early Christian church, arguably the first group of diverse people beyond political affiliation, race, ethnicity, and gender. They lived with each other for something greater beyond themselves. It was them who understood that God created everything, meaning that we are to relate to it in a way in which he actually created it. That he created everyone, meaning we are to see and to relate to people as if God put his hand to their life in a very intentional way and for a great purpose. And we are to live a life, to actually sit with and draw near to a God who said, I want to create you. I want to give you life for a purpose and for a meaning. None of this is by accident. And so if we acknowledge these things, it actually starts to seep into all parts of our life. And so as I start to close and invite the worship team forward, I had 3 areas of our lives that I felt like it might be worth just briefly reflecting on in light of this morning. And so if we actually believe these things, it means, or if we're trying to believe this, oftentimes, it's going to confront what we might be believing about certain things right now. And so I'm just going to give us three. And the first one is that I wonder what you're believing right now about your desires. Your own desires, the things that are inside of you, the things that drive you throughout the day, the things that you want, the things that you think you need, the imagination you have not only for your own life, but maybe for the lives of other people. How would this change your desires right now? And what desires might you have that you're becoming aware of that you might need to actually offer to God? To say, God, what should I do with these desires? I don't believe that all desires are bad, but I also believe that not all desires lead to life. Just like you didn't want to admit the thing earlier that you believed that wasn't true, I'm sure you could raise your hand very quickly on the desires you know you have, the desires you've even lived into that you know did not bring life. I have many. Many a times in my life, the things in which I just thought, this is true of myself, this is me, I'm going to live into this. No one else gets to tell me what to do, are honestly some of the most destructive parts of my life, to myself and to others. So in small and big ways, what are you desiring in life most right now? And what if you just pause for a second and say, God, here's my desires. What do you want me to do with these? Next, maybe for you, what are you believing about others? Is there anyone that you might see as competition, as too far gone, as an obstacle, or maybe even an enemy? Because what we believe about others will determine how we treat them. Who might you need to offer to God right now and be reminded of how He sees them? And lastly, this is by no means an exhaustive list. You can do this with any area in a minute, a moment of your life. But what are you believing about eternity? Is this all there is to life right now? Everything that's going well and everything that's going horribly. Everything that is right and good in the world and everything that is completely broken and in absolute upheaval. Is this it? Is it just temporary? Because if we believe it is just temporary, we will live a very temporal life. We will lead one that has no aim, no center. But if we allow ourselves to imagine 10,000 years from now, as Amazing Grace says, bright and shining like the stars, singing God's praise, what if we allowed that to break in today? How would you operate differently in your life? What would you do differently with your time and your money? What would you do differently in your vocation? What would you wake up for in the morning? The question is, are you living for something that will last? So when we say, I believe in God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, we're not just making a vague personal statement of belief, but we're aligning ourselves with truth that is proclaimed for generations upon generations and will continue to be proclaimed upon generations. God's not just an idea. He's not distant, but he is the creator of all things, of everything, of everyone, and of you. And if that's true, it changes everything. Because it's belief in a good creator that reveals the good we're created for. So why don't we, for fun, before we leave, why don't we stand? We're going to sing together. But if you would like, you don't have to. These Apostle Creed cards are meant to take home. You're invited to maybe even try to memorize it over the next several weeks leading up to Easter. But why don't we read this together, and then the team will take us in to our song before we close. So I'll try to set a helpful cadence here. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. I believe in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord. He was conceived by the power of the Holy Spirit and born of the Virgin Mary. He suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended to the dead. On the third day, he rose again. He ascended into heaven and is seated at the right hand of the Father. He will come again to judge the living and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting.